everyone, and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Thank you so much for joining me again today. On today's episode, we're going to take this flower image and change it into this flower image by some editing in Photoshop and Lightroom. Really like this image, and I just thought it needed a little bit more of a dreamier, open, happy look to it. So let's get started. Okay, here we are inside of Lightroom. I have this happy little image of some flowers dancing in this field. I really like this image, but I think I can make it look better. This is straight out of camera. I shot it in camera raw, so it really looks dull and lifeless right now. But hopefully by the time we're done, it's going to look really beautiful. All right, so let's get started. The first thing I want to do is crop this image because I'm not real happy with the crop. So let's come up to the crop tool here in Lightroom, give that a click. And right now we're at the original aspect ratio, which is what I want. If you wanted to change it, you could click this little lock here and open up the lock. And then the drop down where it says original, give this a click. And then you can come here and choose any one of these aspect ratios or type or enter your own aspect ratio. In my case, we're going to shut this lock back on. Shut this lock back on. That didn't sound right. But we're going to lock this lock back up, I should have said. Okay, so the lock is locked. We're in original. But here's a really good tip for you guys. If you type the L key one time, you'll dim the lights in Lightroom, which is kind of cool. And you can still kind of see the controls and things here. And if you type L one more time, you shut the lights out. And this is a really good aid for cropping. So now watch, I can come up here to the top center of my image, click and drag down. And you notice I just see the image itself. I don't see the rest of the image out here, which is distracting to me. So I can get the crop looking just the way I like it. And so I want a little bit of space here, a little extra space here for breathing room, and the light is filtering down through here and lighten up my beautiful little flowers. And I think that looks really good, guys. So I'm going to type L again to turn the lights back on and see what I mean. This is what you would see if you wouldn't shut the lights out. And that gets distracting for me. Okay, so then if you type your enter key, you'll accept that crop. And there you go. All right, now, this right now is set as shot on the white balance. And I usually like to start from the top and work down in Lightroom, okay? So the white balance is as shot. And I shot this with my Canon 5D Mark II. And I shot it with the auto white balance on. And it does a really good job in auto white balance, okay? But if you click this drop down right here, you can let Lightroom try to figure your white balance out, or you can use the different white balances that your camera has for you. In my case, I use the auto white balance, so I'm leaving it as shot. But I'm just going to take this temperature and just cool it down just a very slight amount right there. I like that. The tint, I think, looks really good, so I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to leave it right where it is. Next thing I'm going to do is set my white point. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this, guys. You can let Lightroom do it by holding the Shift key down and double-clicking whites, and it'll set your white point. If you double-click whites, it'll go back to 0. And if you hold the Shift key and double-click blacks, it'll set your black point for you. I generally don't do it that way, but double-click blacks and that goes back to center. The way I like to do it is, and there's no right or wrong way, it's whichever way you like, and I just want to show you both ways. I like to hold the Option key or the Alt key down on a PC and hold that Option or Alt down and drag that white slider to the right, and the screen goes black. And as soon as you see some color pop up here on the screen, you're starting to clip your white. So just back that off until those go out, and you perfectly set your white point. And same with your black point. Hold the Option or Alt down and drag to the left or right. Now, right now, you'll notice I'm already seeing some color here, so I'm already clipping my blacks a little bit, so I'd have to move it to the right. And that would be like a perfect black point adjustment, all right? And I think it looks pretty good. I might just want to darken those up just a little bit, the dark areas a little bit right there. The black level is a lot more forgiving than the whites. You definitely don't ever want to clip your whites, but you can clip your blacks for artistic looks. That's okay. It's really, let your eyes judge where you want to set it. But I always like to start at the default setting where the black level is perfectly set, and then I can adjust it from there. Again, I can move it more to the right, move it to the left, depending what look I want. So I'm just going to, again, eyeball it here, guys. So I'm just re-looking at this again, and I'm going to say, oh, right there, I like that. Right there. I'm not going to touch my clarity or dehaze. Don't need it for this flower image, but the vibrance, I want to make these pinks pop a little bit more here. So, and I think by moving this vibrance up, I can make that happen. Yeah, look at that. See how they just start to come to life here a little bit, and I like that. But I don't like what happened to the greens. So what I'm going to do here is come to the HSL color section right here. This is really cool. I'm going to give this a click. Come here to the saturation area. This is the targeted adjustment tool. This is a cool tool. Give that a click, and you have to click it. It becomes active. And see that little bullseye right there? Come to the section of the image that you want to adjust the color on. So right here, and I'm on saturation, so I'll be adjusting the saturation. So if I click and drag down, I will decrease saturation of whatever colors are there. And you'll notice the green slider is moving to the left. If I move it to the right, I'm adding color. Now, if there were more colors in there, guys, you would see maybe 2 or 3 sliders moving at one time. But in my case, there's only green there. And I just want to reduce that green a little bit to maybe right there. I think that looks better. Okay. And then I want to come down to the lens corrections, and I want to make sure that I remove chromatic aberrations by giving that a click and enable the profile corrections. I want to do that. Gets rid of vignetting around the edges, and also any anomalies in the lens, it'll fix those up too. And you'll watch the image when I click this, how the image changes a little bit. The edges brighten up and the distortions around the edges will go away. So it's always a good thing to do, and I always like to do the lens corrections. And the final thing I want to do is come to detail here. And it's the sharpening is defaulted at 25, and I'm really happy with the sharpening here, so I'm not going to really mess with that. But the luminance noise reduction, I shot this at ISO 160. There's not a lot of noise in here. Let me just zoom in and see. There's a little bit of noise. I might just decrease that noise a little bit, maybe up to about maybe 18 to 20%, somewhere in there. I think that looks good, and I'm happy with that. All right, so just decrease a little bit of that noise in there. And the sharpening, I think, looks pretty good. So I'm going to let that alone. Now all I need to do is take this into Photoshop, where the magic will begin. Oh, and by the way, if I type the backslash key here, you'll see the before and the after. So that's pretty cool. There's the before and there's the after. So that's our Lightroom edit so far. So now we right-click and edit in Photoshop CC 2019. Okay, in Photoshop, the first thing we want to do is duplicate this background layer. And the reason I want to do that, guys, is I want to add some blur to this background using the blur filters inside of Photoshop. So to duplicate it, it's Command-J in a Mac, Control-J in a PC to duplicate the layer. And then we want to come up to the menu section up here and click on Filter and come to Blur Gallery. Now this blur gallery is provided by Photoshop. Okay, so that's part of the Photoshop program. And I'm looking for the one called Iris Blur. And there's different ones in here. And we'll look at these all eventually at some point in time, guys. But for now, we're going to look at my favorite, which is the Iris Blur for flower photography. So click on Iris Blur, and that brings us into the Iris Blur. And then you see this circle inside of here. That this is the default setting inside of the Iris Blur. And you can move this area around here. And just to explain this circle here, this outer ring here, from this point on is full blur. And from this point up to these little dots is where the blur graduates. Okay. And inside of these dots is no blur at all. And you can come here, click and move this around, and you can click and drag this way or that way to add more or less blur. Okay, let me just show you that. See how I can make more or less blur. You can use that for the adjustment, but I like to come over here to where it says blur and drag this slider. But first off, let me show you how to adjust the shape of this thing, because you can adjust this, guys, to different shapes. To change the shapes, you have to see these four little white dots, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you click on any one of those, click and drag in or out, you can change the shape. Let's go to the top one just to demonstrate. So you can change the shape. Okay. Then if you go to the line itself, you can make the shape larger or smaller, which is cool, right? You can also adjust these transitional points, move these in and out. Just grab one of them, they'll all move together. And I believe if you hold I think it's the shift key. Let me try. No, it's not shift. It might be the option. Yeah, if you hold the option key and drag a point, you can just affect one point. Okay, but if you don't hold the Option key, it's affecting all the points together. Okay, so sometimes you need to make that blur area very accurate, so that's important. So I just want to explain that to you. So let's find the area we want to be in focus, and definitely the center of my flower, but I want this portion of the flower to be in focus. So let's make my shape bigger. So I want to make sure that this area is encompassed in the focus part. So I'm thinking right around there, guys. Let's bring this in a little bit more. Somewhere, I think somewhere right in there. Now let's add a little bit of blur here. Now already it's defaulted at a fixed 15 pixel blur, which I think looks pretty good. Let me just add a little, add a little more blur. Now you can go crazy here, guys, and add tons of blur, which looks horrible, but again, there's lots of range here for you. And I think that 15% actually looks pretty good. Let me just bump it up to about, let's go to about 19. Boy, splitting hairs, huh? I think that looks really good. Now, in order to sell a blur, guys, all your images are going to have a little bit of noise. Now, I did some noise reduction on this image, as you remember, inside of Lightroom. So there's not much noise in this image, so I don't have a lot of noise. But I may have shot an image where I used a higher ISO, and there might be more noise in here, so I'd have to match this blur. I'd have to add some noise to this blur to match the noise inside of the non-blur area. And you can zoom into your picture to do that. In my case, I'm not going to do that because I don't have much noise in here. But I'm going to come to this section here. See where it says grain? And I'm going to take this grain slider. I'm just going to bump this up a little bit. Now watch, I'm just going to keep moving up so you can see. See all that grain I can add? I can add tons of grain in here. But in my case, guys, I know, because I do this a lot, I just need a little bit of grain in here. And I think right around the, like 7.7. That's going to be really nice. That's going to match it up. So if you look close to my image, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the little bit of noise here and the little bit of noise I added. It's going to match up and it's going to look accurate. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that is all we need to do here. So all we need to do when we're done is click OK. But before we do that, let's click the preview button here so we can see the before. And you notice that flower it's sharp. Now after the little extra blur, this flower, they got a little blurrier. And I think that adds to a nice ethereal dreaminess to this picture. Very cool. So I'm just going to press OK or click OK. I don't have a touch screen here, so I have to click OK with my mouse. All right. So here we go. We're back in Photoshop. Layer 1, that's my blur. So let's click the eyeball. There's our before and there's our after. There's just one final step here, guys, and I want to add a foggy color around the edge of this to really make this ethereal. And I'm going to use a really cool plugin, which is made by by DxO, the NIK collection. And we're going to come up here to Filter and find NIK collection and go to Color Effects Pro 4 because that's where the vignette filter sits. So let's click that. Now, when you open up Color Effects Pro 4, it'll come on to your last filter used. In my case, I used the vignette filter last, so it comes on here. And you'll notice the opacity is shut off, so there's nothing applied to this. But if you needed to find the vignette filter, if it wasn't here, you would come over here and just click on the filter over here. You just have to find it here. Okay, and it's right down at the bottom, vignette filter, and you give it a click and it will pop in up here. Okay. And to get rid of a filter here, by the way, guys, you can just click X and you'll get rid of the filter that was there. And then it says, please select a filter from the filter list. Okay, so let's go over here and vignette filter, give that a click. I just wanted to show you that. And it defaults at black here with a dark vignette around here. So let's just take this opacity and slide it the whole way to the left. That shuts off the vignette. It defaults at this shape of number 2. So let's click this right here. Before I click this, let's turn the opacity up. This is just a standard vignette here, guys. So let's click the shape. Let's hover over shape 1. It's more of a circular vignette. Shape 2, more oval. And then this shape 3 is more rectangle as well as 4. Those are more rectangular type shapes. In my case, I'm going to use shape 1. And also you have a place center button here. So you can click this and place the center of your vignette wherever you would like it to be. I'm going to keep mine right there. I think it's going to be pretty good. This adapt edges is a really cool thing here. If I move it to the left, I will not be adapting to the edges of the image. And you'll see what I mean here in a sec. I'm going to take this opacity and bring this opacity up. Let's take my transition the whole way down. So you can see my circular vignette here, right guys? Now watch what happens when I pull the adapt edges up. See how it's trying to latch onto the edges of things? In my case, I'm going to jack this the whole way to the right. You'll see in a second why this is going to be cool. But that's what adapt edges does. And then transition, adjust the transition, okay, of how that vignette is going. In my case, my transition is going to be the whole way to the right. And we'll adjust the size. But for now, let's take this opacity off. But what I want to do, and this is really cool, is click on this little eyedropper tool right here, guys. Give it a click, and then I'm going to find a color that I want my vignette to be. So you don't have to settle for just a black or a light vignette. You can use a colored vignette, and that's why I love this NIK Collection Color Efex Pro 4 Vignette Filter. So let's find a color that we like. I think one of these colors of green right here might work. Now watch what happens when I take the opacity and start to pull it up. See how it adds like a green foggy vignette to my image, okay? And now I'm going to take my size and really increase that size. When I'm doing this effect, guys, I like to take the size. A lot of times I'll take the size and move it the whole way to the right. In this case, that's a little too much because I'm putting some green onto my flower there, which I don't want. And again, I can take this place center and move this around a little bit. For instance, let's click that place center and move it right up around here. Yeah, that way I make sure I'm not touching this flower here. Okay, so I kind of like that green foggy vignette. That looks really, really nice. See, and I probably back it off a little bit, but somewhere in that area. Let's look at the before and after. Click the compare up here at the top left-hand side of the interface. There's the before. Release the mouse click. There's the after. So before and after. So that's pretty cool. I like that. But I'm going to go with a different color. I'm going to go with more of a pink color. Some of the pinks that are in here. Okay, so I'm going to take this opacity, drag it the whole way to the left, because I want these colors to be pure in here. Because when I get this eyedropper tool, I'm going to click it, and I'm going to come to one of these colors, and I'm going to find a color, and I think it's this color right here. Give that a click. Now watch what happens when I pull this opacity up. Is that cool or what? Isn't that neat? If I go too much, it's going to look, well, that looks kind of pretty, but I don't like the green in here, so that's not real attractive. But let's take this opacity the whole way back again, and let's build it up slowly. Let's find a spot where it looks natural but beautiful. I'm just looking for a little bit of a pink fog around the edges of my image, but I want the transition to look really nice. Now let's take the size and move it up more. That's going to help too, guys, by moving the size up. See, if I take the size to the left, see, I'm getting too big of a green hole in the center. I want that filled in. And remember, I have my adapt edges on, so it's trying to adapt to the edges of things. So that works out really nice. So this is a really good formula for most images. Adapt edges to the right, transition the full way to the right, and size the full way to the right. Now, so you may have to alter these a little bit, but that's to taste. So you want to find the exact spot. But this is a good starting point anyway, right around here. And opacity around 11% is usually pretty good. Let's just bring it up a little bit more. I don't want to go too high there. I'm going to settle on like 13. No, I'm back to 11%. Like 30. I'm going to leave it at 13%. Let's look at the compare. Let's click the compare button here. There's the before. There's the after. Before and after. So there it is, guys. I really like that. I think that looks really good. Now all I need to do is click OK, and that'll put us back into Photoshop. And the cool thing about NIK is it will rename. Right now it says NIK Collection. When it's done, it's going to say Vignette Filter CEP4 Color Efex Pro 4, which is really cool, right? So it names your layer for you. Now, if you have too much color here, you can just take this opacity slider and just back it off a little bit. And I might do that. Just back it off a little bit to make it look more natural. Now, let's Option or Alt-click the background layer so we can see the before and the after. So I think that looks really cool. I think we've achieved the effect that we were looking for, guys. A little more dreamy or artistic picture, and I'm really happy with that. Now, when I'm done with an image, generally, I'm not saving all my layers, so I'm just going to right-click the top layer and go to Flatten Image. And then on a Mac, it would be Command S to save the image, and we can go back into Lightroom and see it, or it would be Control S on a PC. So That'll save it. And you can see here it's saving 10%. It's done. Now I'm going to go back into Lightroom. Whoops. Back into Lightroom. And there we go, guys. There's our image. Now let's shut the lights out. Remember the little trick. Type the L once, dim, type the L twice. There we go. The lights are out. So now you can really look at your image, and I think it looks really cool. Well, there it is, guys. I hope you enjoyed that one. Well, thanks for joining me today, guys. I really appreciate you very, very much. If you like this one, please give it a like. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and click that bell notification icon so you can be informed of all the new training videos that I'm putting out. Okay? And I'm putting them out all the time, guys. So please click that bell notification icon and subscribe. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.